Thank you, Henry. Thanks for inviting me for this webinar. Uh, Today's topic that I will be talking about is about IoT security and how we are tackling this uh, topic at Konecranes. Uh, so how I will do it is in a way that first I will talk more generically about IoT security, its context, the landscape, and some finding and fixes from our point of view, that what we think at Konecranes is important. And then I will switch to a bit of introduction of what Konecrane is doing and how we are doing IoT security at our factories and at our cranes, at our ports. So before I start, a little bit of introduction about myself. I'm Basit Syed. I am the product security manager uh, for Konecranes, and I'm responsible for everything related to all the uh, security and the products and anything that we are selling to the customers, whether they are cranes or they are our digital platform or our ports or or any other equipment that is being sold to the customer. So I'm responsible for the security uh, for those. So let's begin. So I will not go into the details of what IoT is and how these things are working. I assume that this audience is knowledgeable enough to know about that. So uh, I will go directly into the building the context around the IoT security and addressing the major issues that are present at the moment. So so the first thing that I would like to talk about is about the access management. So uh, those most of the IoT devices have very weak passwords. They are usually hard coded, and usually they are never changed throughout the life cycle of those devices. So what it means is that sometimes even in some factories and in some even in some very critical mission critical equipment, if you have some IoT device, so it's possible that it has the same password uh, that was first burned in when it was produced in the factory. So it makes them really vulnerable uh, to attacks um, from the outside. The other thing is are the network services. So as the IoT devices are usually very scarce on the resources, and also many devices and IoT equipment doesn't have doesn't have the access of which we have on the IT side. So it's really common that those IT devices and those platforms are usually running the services that are actually not needed. So there is a huge amount of those unneeded and insecure services that are already running on the IoT devices. Then thinking about the interfaces, the same thing that we are seeing on the services side is also visible on the interface side as well. So so we have a plethora of these kind of web interfaces, the backend and the cloud interfaces, and the mobile interfaces, and especially now when these IT devices are being connected to more like being controlled from the mobile applications. So so the interfaces, the passwords, and then the services running uh, on our equipment is actually a huge issue at the moment. Then then comes the issue of updating and upgrading our devices. So for example, if you think about the IT side of the things, it's very common to get kind of a monthly updates for our systems. But just think about for example, a factory that is so I will give you an example of a crane in a factory. For example, in a big uh, power plants. So there are these huge generators that cannot be moved unless you have a huge specially made crane that can pick up the generator and move it to another place, and it gets serviced, and then they put it back using the same crane. So it happens that that crane that is being used to move that generator is only used for like once a year or once every 2 years, and for the rest of the lifetime that crane just sits there doing nothing. So So usually what happens is that these kind of cranes have a lot of these kind of small devices that are running into it, and then and also many different kind of equipment. So what happens is that the owner of the facility don't want anyone to touch that crane, because that crane is really critical to the operations. And so what ends up happening is that that crane just sits there, and it never gets upgraded, or there is no new security measures that are being taken into. This was okay a few years back, maybe, because at that time these kind of equipment, cranes, and these industrial systems, they are actually they are existing on an air gap, so they are not connected to the IT systems and to the internet. But now with this IoT revolution, this is not acceptable anymore. So there is a huge issue of updating and upgrading these devices at the moment. Then comes uh, the the communication part, or the transport part. So most of the IoT uh, devices and IoT platforms at the moment uh, don't use any encryption, and the reason is quite understandable, because IoT devices, most of them don't have uh, this extra resources to encrypt and then send the data. But that makes it really vulnerable, because if for example, some mission critical systems, or for example, let's take example of a steel mill, where a huge crane is actually picking up uh, like tons of molten metal and then putting it from one place to another. So at that place, if you think about it, that uh, if a hacker or a bad actor takes control of that crane, then what can happen after that? And we have one of the incidents in a German steel mill a few years back, when a hacker takes control of some machines there, and and that steel mill ends up burning after that. So encryption is one of the issues as well. Then the device management, so which means that this asset management and the secure monitoring and the incident response are mostly missing at the moment. Then also the default settings, just like those default passwords and those passwords that never change. Same is the case with the settings as well. For example, if an IoT device is mass produced, so most of them will have those default settings for throughout their lifetime. And so the thing is that if you know how to hack one device, then all other devices are just sitting ducks for you. So this is also an issue. And then, of course, the physical security, because as I already mentioned that previously, uh, these devices were existing over the air gap. So so they were so the physical security was also of the kind of a paramount importance for these kind of devices, and it's still true today. And so there is also the need of making this physical hardening, and making the access to those devices more difficult, so that so that an attacker doesn't actually physically reach that device and do something that compromises the devices in 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 the system. Okay, so if you think about it, uh, so the IoT landscape at the moment is quite complex, and the reason is that as Alexander also mentioned earlier in the talk, that there are a lot of vendors, and over the period of the years, they are creating a lot of different kind of devices and the networks and the platforms and all. Since uh, with this IoT, now these devices are being connected back towards the cloud platforms, and so all of these things are making it like a kind of very heterogeneous kind of an issue for us. So there is a huge amount of complexity that is present in this issue of the IoT security. Then thinking about those IoT devices, so we can some of those IoT devices can be uh, called that they are the weakest link in the chain at the moment. And all- the reason is all of those things that I just mentioned on the previous slide. So in many systems, it comes down to the thing that we can say that okay, these are that IoT devices are the weakest link in our whole system, and they are the first one that can be compromised. So this means that there is no single solution for this IoT security landscape, and and there is and then we can say that there is no one silver bullet for that, and this is a hard problem, and it needs time and commitment to to solve and to make our systems more secure. And as I already mentioned earlier, so one of the issues in the IoT landscape these days is that the, that the owners of the facilities and the owners of those machines and devices and in the industries and wherever they are being used, they are playing the safe game because they don't want to disrupt their normal operations. And as a result, it sometimes is really difficult to convince them that now it's the time to upgrade your devices or change the strategy that how you are handling your systems basically, and it's time to upgrade them. So as I just mentioned, that it's a long-term roadmap, and it is better to start as early as possible in order to tackle these issues. So from our point of view, some very simple things to begin with is that, for example, a company like us, who is the OEM, we are manufacturing equipment. So we start with our current state analysis where we are. We review, we find our gaps, and then we do our gap analysis, and then we think that how can we uh, fill up those gaps either by using our own resources, or are there any innovative technologies already in the market, and using those, and also and thinking about our legacy systems, and thinking that how to upgrade them or how to phase them out and replace them with the new systems. So the recommendation is to, as usual, to start with the fundamentals. For example, start with authentication and access control issues in your system, and then work towards the secure updates and look into the physical security to begin with. Once these low-hanging fruits are dealt with, then we can move towards a more formal things and more, I mean, the deep solutions that we have. So moving towards the secure design principles, and in this case, these, for example, IEC 62000 standard comes in handy, and it provides a lot of guidance that can be used for this purpose. I'm actually running out of time, so I'm just skipping ahead. So a few words about the Konecranes. So Konecranes is uh, uh, a is an industrial equipment manufacturer. We are in 50 countries, and we have 3.2 billion euros of revenue per year, and we have more than 17,000 employees in different countries. And Konecrane is basically manufacturing cranes, and it's catering to many different industries, as you can see on the screen right now. And in this way, we have other businesses as well. For example, this warehouse automation, and then we are building ports as well, and also handling the nuclear facilities. Okay, so this is one picture that I would like to show, like the scale of the things that we do at Konecranes. So this is a crane which we call Goliath. It's in Brazil, and then this sorry, the the width of this crane is about 200 meters. So you can see the scale of the things that are at work here. And just imagine that if somebody takes over this crane, then he can, or that person or that actor can actually destroy the whole port after that. Okay, so just thinking from the Konecranes perspective, so we are actually tackling the security from two different angles. So we also have our factories where all of our equipment is manufactured. So we have to look into the security of the factories as well, our own infrastructure. Plus, we look into the security of the products and the services that we are selling to the customers. And IoT is actually heavily present in both of the sides, because we have thousands of sensors and IoT devices in our factories, as well as in our cranes that we are selling to the customers all over the world. Okay, so think from our perspective, from the Konecranes perspective, our approach is and our recommendation is that focus on the basics to begin with. Just go for the low hanging fruits first, and get those things in order, and then start from the research, start from the beginning. So what we have already started doing at Konecranes is that we are uh, we have already we are already providing input from the security point of view into our research teams, basically, so that once those research ideas becomes the original the actual product, so they already have the security embedded in them. Then we are having our regular security reviews and audits across our factories as well as our products, and we are always on the lookout for the innovative partners and solutions, and always open to the suggestions as well. And then we comply with the international industry and local regulation and standards. For example, we are working towards IAC 2000 and ISO 27000 certifications at the moment. So apart from that, uh, uh, we, uh, we have started following this secure development lifecycle and processes uh, to to not only provide the security in the research part, but also in the development part as well. So we are moving towards the security by design principles at the moment. And to do so, we have a company-wide chain of security leads and champions that are responsible for their own uh, uh, departments. And those security leads and champions are actually following the vision that is provided by the steering group and the board of directors. So just a few words about how are we securing our factories, for example. So we are working extensively into getting the visibility into the inventory, that what kind of devices we have and where they are at the moment. And we are moving towards a centralized management of those devices, and implementing the network segmentation in our factories at the moment, and then working towards developing our own monitoring and incident response capabilities. So one of the product that we have is the TrueConnect. TrueConnect is basically uh, uh, it actually monitors all the cranes and overall industrial equipment, and then it can send back the data in a very secure way to a central platform where that data can be analyzed and can be used for diagnosis purposes, as well as uh, uh, working towards finding out if there is any security threat at the moment. Okay, so I'm 2 minutes over my time, and thank you very much. And if there are any questions, I'm very happy to answer.